And will you have another screen where somebody does comment, I can see it, or?
Yeah, I'm gonna get a thumbnail on it for YouTube, but
Okay.
the comments will show up right here on the right side.
Oh, okay, right on. After these messages, we'll be right back. No one had... What is going on? Welcome to the live stream here at Ozark Fence. You are live with us in the fabrication shop on this beautiful Friday. What are we doing here? Well, we're hanging out, we're working, we're on the clock, we're supposed to be doing things, and that's precisely what we're going to be doing. We're going to be making some wood gates. These are steel frame wood gates for wood fence. And we thought we would just throw on the camera, go live, and kind of run through the process of what it looks like in a fabrication shop at a fence company to make wood gates. So that is what we're here doing. Hopefully you guys will hang with us. If you have any questions about what we're doing, some of the processes, or just any general fence questions, let us know in the comments below and we'll get rolling on making some wood gates. So our gates here at Ozark Fence, we do them out of 1.5" square tube, and we feel that a steel framed wood gate is much better. It's stronger, it's a better material, it lasts longer. There's tons of gates all over Springfield where we're at, and the old way to do it is to use your 2x4s and frame out a gate for your yard out of the leftover 2x4s. But this is 2025, we have a new way to do it. And it's something that we like to do because it's just an overall better product. And that's what we're going to be showing you guys here today. We use a system of gate hardware called Shark Hardware. If you're not familiar with that, that is pretty much solely what we use here. We believe in it. It works really well. And it's kind of like sort of like a butterfly hinge or an old school door hinge, but it's used to mount to a 2.5-inch round pipe. And that's what we use for our gate post. Instead of using the traditional 4x4 treated pine post. So we like to upgrade the materials for most of our projects, and the gate is no exception. We like to put our time and effort into making a good gate that's going to last for years. So what does that look like? I've got one right behind me. I'll drag it up here. We'll quickly talk about some of the aspects of this gate, and then you'll get to hang out and watch us make some. And again, if you have any questions about the process of making them, or any general questions about making gates for fences in general, drop them in the comments. We'd be glad to help answer any questions you guys have. So, this behind me here is one of our wood gates, and you can see that it is a steel frame, and behind here we've got the entire square made out of 1.5-inch square tubing, and then we use 2x4s to face the front of this gate. And we have this particular gate is for 6-foot fence, so we have 3 runners, one in the middle, one at the top, and one at the bottom. And we pretty much fabricate these from scratch here at the shop. We start by cutting out our pieces to the right dimensions, and then we go and we drill the holes to accept the 2x4s, and also to drill out the holes for the hinges, which look like that. So the Shark hardware that we use takes 2 holes spaced 3.5 inches apart, and they're roughly 5/8 inch in diameter, and they work really well. In fact, let me go grab one, and if you're not familiar with what a Shark hinge looks like, I'll go get one so you can see. So, here is the Shark hinge. It's a pretty neat contraption. This is the actual hinge part, and you can see that it is pretty much retrofitted to fit on a 2.5-inch round post. It comes with these really good heavy-duty bolts, and that's the reason why we drill these out, so that you can basically go and mount your hinges onto your gate and your post. It's a really good system. We really like it, and it's something we've been using now for, I want to say, about 7 years, 6 or 7 years, maybe a little longer. But in that time, we really haven't had a whole lot of issues with having to go back to do a lot of repairs on sagging gates. So that's why we really like them. Anyway, that gives you a little bit of back information. Now we're going to get into just making some, and behind me you may notice a couple other guys working. We got Kyle back here working on welding up another gate, and we've got Tom over at the drill press. He's drilling out the holes for some more wood gates. So hang out with us for a bit, and let us know if you got any questions. Yeah, right on. So for a typical setup for what we do in here, number one, we need a welder, of course, but a couple of the other tools that we use on a daily: a drill press, the welding table, a welder, and then some of the other things that we use would be like tape measure, a speed square. I have a couple of jigs on my table that help me find the 90-degree angle. So those are pretty handy for a larger setup like this. And if you're thinking about making one yourself, those are some pretty, common tools that you might want to use. You see some other fabrication shops come up with pretty elaborate jigs so that they can make a bunch of gates. And we don't really have anything like that. We basically do one gate at a time. We throw it in our cornering jig and then just make sure that the gate is square if it needs to be square, and that sort of thing. So for this next little bit, we'll hop over to my table and I'll show you what it looks like to stick one of these gates together. How we doing on the volume over here? Can you hear me all right?
Here a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, so typically I start with one corner and then I'll move on to my next. And you can see what my jig looks like here. It's pretty much just a perfect 90-degree piece of angle iron that I've made. And you can tell for the most part I'm pretty much just tacking these down for now, and then once we get them tacked we'll go ahead and make sure that everything's all square. How many more of those you got?
This is the last of the 45s.
Okay.
Then the rest of those.
Yeah. Okay.
So, not too many.
Cool. Let's see. Okay, so now that we have the gate frame tacked together, basically, where we're just making sure each corner is stuck together, we're now ready to make sure that the gate frame is square. Now, not all gate frames are gonna be square. It depends on the grade of the ground. So if your slope or grade level is flat, then you're gonna want a square frame. But if you have, let's say you're putting a gate on a hill and it has a little bit of a slope, Then you need to properly measure that slope and put a rack or a drop or a slope into the actual gate frame. For these particular ones, we just make them kind of stock so that anybody with a flat ground can come and buy a regular gate. And for the most part, most yards are typically flat or close to it. So we make these ahead of time so that they're available for people to come in and buy. We also ship these all over the United States. We have people in lots of different states reach out to us and they buy these online. We ship them here from our facility to wherever they live. We can bring them right to your doorstep, which is really cool. And what's even better about that is we do have normal stock sizes like 4 foot wide, 5 foot wide, that sort of thing. But we can also make them custom widths to whatever size you need. Now, typically for like a Shark system with Shark hardware, you're not going to want to go any wider than, let's say, 6 or 7 feet. That's really kind of, you know, where you want to keep it. So if you wanted something like let's say a 14 or a 14-foot opening, then you might think about doing 2 sets of gates so that you didn't have one long one. It does work when they're longer than that, but you know, just through physics and the way that it's put together, the longer the gate, the more you know, gravity is going to want to pull down one side. So you kind of have to just keep that in mind. But for our example today with this, we're just going to be doing them square. And so a really easy way to check that is to measure diagonally from one corner down to the next. And then you're going to do the next corner in a diagonal fashion, and you're going to want those measurements to match. So if you draw the tape on one diagonal and it's, let's say, 60 inches, and then you do your next one and it's 61 inches, then you know there's a little bit of wonkiness to your frame. So it's really quick and easy to do, and it just ensures that the gate is squared up. So that's what I'm going to be doing now. So for that one, we're right at 60 inches. And this one is 60 and a 16th. So that's pretty stinking close. A 16th inch isn't going to be that big a deal. Go ahead.
Hey, on that 11 by 72 wire, I saw that we got a bunch in from Stevens. The count that you gave me, is that already including like Mason getting his?
Jesus. 2 by 11 by 72. Yes. You got it. We getting any comments?
Not yet.
Not any questions yet. All right. So if you guys are watching, make sure to drop something in the comments. Let us know what you think of the video. If you got any questions, don't be afraid to ask them. No question is a dumb question. And we'll do our best to keep an eye out for questions or comments. Yeah, so now that we know our gate frame is good and squared up, we're ready to pretty much weld the whole thing up. So let's get after that. And just like that, we got one done. So now that it's welded up, we're going to go ahead and scratch off the welds and get those clean, and then we're going to be using some Galv Pro Galv Match Plus with zinc coating. And just like that, we now have a completed gate frame. So this one's a little bit smaller than the first one we showed. This one is for a 4-foot tall fence. And with 4-foot fence, we normally only use 2 runners or 2 2x4s for the frame. So you've got a top and a bottom on this one. And at this point here, we're going to go ahead and throw on some 2x4s. You could do this lots of different ways, but with the system that we have with the Shark hardware, we normally will mount 2x4s to the face of the gate. And that way, when our crews go out to install them, it's pretty quick and easy to throw tickets up onto the 2x4 and use an automatic nailer to nail them up real quick. I'm going to go grab some 2x4s from the yard, and I will return here in a minute. And we're back with a couple of 2x4s from the yard. It just rained earlier, so there was a bunch of water on the top of the tarp, and when I went to go pull these off, I got a surprise dump of water, and luckily I didn't get too wet, but it could have been way worse. Anyway, we've got a couple of good looking 2x4s. We're going to go ahead and cut these to the right width, as these will be for the horizontal part of the gate, and then we'll get them attached. We use carriage bolts to attach them. That's why we drill the holes in the horizontal pieces. We used galvanized 3/8 inch carriage bolts, and that way they are on there and won't be wiggling loose or coming off, and they're good, and good way to do it. Keeps the boards and the pickets attached to the gate securely. So let's go ahead and get them cut. We'll throw them on there. And don't be shy if you got any questions about what we're doing today. Maybe you just hopped on. Hit us up with a comment. Ask us what we're doing. Ask us if you have any particular questions related to anything. Any question you got, throw it up there. Got 4 foot wide gate. We're going to cut a couple pieces out of 4 foot. These are 2x4 by 8 feet long pieces of wood, except you can see there, maybe you can see the line, maybe you can't. We've got about 3/16 of an inch. This is really nice actually on a 2x4 to be a little bit longer, because it's better to be longer than shorter in most cases, and especially with this. That way we can definitely get 2 4-foot pieces out of this one board. And I like to put the boards on the bottom of the frame, and that way you can get the board lined up pretty much where you want it, and it also allows you to have access to the hole to be able to drill the hole without guessing where you're drilling. This is just a good way to do it. And I said earlier that this is for a 4-foot fence. And if you notice, maybe you can see it, maybe you can't, this gate frame is actually only 3 feet tall. And the reason for that is because you want to have 6 inches of picket sticking off the top and 6 inches hanging down below. You essentially don't want the gate to drag in the grass, but that's why we make the frame 1 foot smaller or shorter than whatever height the fence is going to be. So for a 6 foot tall privacy fence, we make the gate frames 5 foot tall. For a 4 foot, we make the gate frames 3 foot tall. So we just do 1 foot shorter than whatever it is. Basically just drill out the holes there, and we are now ready to get our carriage bolts, and we're going to hammer them up in here, put a washer on it, and then tighten down a nut to secure this 2x4. Hammer's good.
I know. From right here.
Crappiest hammer we own.
Yep.
I like it.
I knew you would.
The old duct tape handle hammer. Doesn't get any better than that. Once we get the bolts beat up into the wood, we throw the washer down and the nut and tighten it up. And something else we try to do is when we tighten these up, you'll notice that the carriage bolt has this head here. So we like to try to tighten this up to go through the wood. That way the head of the bolt isn't sticking out, because that way when you go to put your pickets on, the 2x4 is nice and flat and you won't have any weird uneven surfaces because your bolt head is sticking out. So that's kind of an important part. Now that we got one side on, we'll go ahead and put the wood on the other side. And there we have it. We have one completed gate frame. And this will be really good for the next guy who needs a 4-foot walk-through gate for his 4-foot privacy fence. And we do sell these quite a bit. As I mentioned, we have a lot of walk-in customers that live here locally. We also ship them, and yeah, it just makes a really good, solid gate. Nice. So Mark, our YouTube guy, just let me know that we have a comment. Let me read and see what it says. Fantasy Guru, why steel instead of wood for a frame? I think wood has a better visual appeal. That is a great point. You know, I would agree with you in some sense that an all-wood fence does have a sort of a visual appeal. In a sense that the rest of the fence is wood, why go with the steel frame? Well, to answer that question, the best way I know how is mainly just due to the structural integrity. Even though you do see the steel frame on the back side of the gate, I think the trade-off is worth it, and I feel like our customers feel the same way. Now, can you make a wood-framed wood gate and make it last for a while? Yeah, you can. But eventually what happens after time is the wood begins to rot, and you see a lot of those gates with the diagonal bracing. Wood just doesn't last as long as steel does. And so to answer that question, the best way I know how is basically that answer, is just because it lasts longer. It's a better, stronger product, and it's better for the customer. They pay a lot of money to have a fence, and the gate is something that's always going to be used. You may not always go to the corner of your fence and look at it or climb on it or whatever, but you're always going to be walking through that gate. So not only do you use it more often, but you need it to work reliably. And so that's a big part of why we decided to switch to all steel construction for the frame, at least, is basically just for those reasons. So hopefully that helps answer your question. I would agree with you, though, that a good wood fence is, with a wood frame, does look really nice. But the steel frame gates also look pretty good as well, especially when you have round gate posts that match it. And then depending upon how we do the fence, sometimes we live here in Missouri, so sometimes we drive the post. And when we drive post, we use 2.5-inch Schedule 40 round post for all the post. And some fence companies will leave it at that and just use that. Others use the Postmaster post, which is a purpose-built post specifically for wood fence. And then other people still use traditional 4x4s. It really just depends, I guess. But hopefully that answers your question. So we've got a few more behind us that we're going to run through. If anybody has any other questions, don't be afraid to ask them, and we'll try to get to them. Appreciate you guys watching.
Got another comment.
Okay, we got another one. Can you guys fabricate metal CNC? If so, I have a huge business opportunity for you. The Ascending and Ancient. Okay. We do not have a CNC machine. We do fabricate a lot of custom things. Even though we're a fence company, it's funny, I learned to weld here pretty much. I did some in high school. I wasn't super great, but when I started working for Joe here in 2017, I had very limited fabrication knowledge, mainly welding. And as the years have gone by, we've done lots of different things that isn't necessarily fence related. We had just recently, actually, a guy pull up and he was asking for a little bit of help. He had some of his undercarriage to his car falling apart, and we helped him weld back on, I believe it was his muffler or some exhaust piece. So we've done some of that. We also built a rack for a guy that needed some sort of a racking system for his vehicle. And we've done some other things too. So we do fabricate custom stuff here. It's not a wide variety of things, but we're not afraid to try something different or to help somebody out. I think one of the best reasons why I like working here is because of the sense of community that Ozark Fence has to offer. You know, they really try to do a lot for the surrounding area, and that includes helping people come in that are wandering by and need something kind of off the wall. We're not afraid to say, yes, we'll give that a try. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question. And I'm curious, what business idea do you have? We partnered with another guy who was a friend slash customer of Joe's. He has a CNC machine, and he actually made us some knuckling tools, which is really cool. So he bought large sheets of plate steel and used his CNC machine to cut out the shape of these tools. In fact, I have one here behind me. I'll see if I can find it and show you. Maybe I do. Right here. So this is a homemade version of what we call a T-tool or a knuckling tool. And this is very specific to chain link fence. So anytime you need to cut chain link fence, you always have to bend over the strand if you're going to be shortening the wire, or doing a drop in a fence or making gates, etc. So basically it's just a T with a little notch cut out, and that notch helps to grab the chain link wire and bend it over in a knuckle. And so we made, we've made dozens of these throughout the years to help us. Well, that customer had the idea, hey, I got a really cool setup here. I could make these sorts of tools for you. And I want to say Joe partnered with him to do that. And we now, I want to say, still have these available. This is the one that he came up with, which is really cool. It's essentially the same thing. It does the exact same thing, but you can tell it's got the cool built-in grip for your hands. It's got the knuckling part to bend wire over, and then it's got a cutout of a half-inch nut for a carriage bolt, and that was kind of a cool add-on. If you're at the end of your chain link run and you're away from your truck and you forgot to tighten up a nut or something, you could use this to tighten it up real quick. Anyway, this would be a great example of something along those lines. It's definitely a cool tool. I'll grab something else that we made. So these are framing jigs, and while we're on the topic of wood fence, that's exactly what these are. So for anybody out there who has built wood fence or wood privacy fence, you may be familiar with these. You see lots of guys kind of make them on the fly out of 2x4s, which is fine. We do these out of our gate material. This is 1.5 inch square tube, and essentially what this does is once you are done setting your posts and you get your top 2x4 framed out, you can then take the hook part of this, throw it on your top 2x4, and then it's got the bottom two rungs to be able to very quickly place your mid rail and your bottom rail. And with two of these, one or two guys can go around an entire backyard, hang these two up on the top 2x4, and finish framing out the mid and bottom runners or 2x4s. And so these are really cool. This is something that I've been trying to push because it's super easy to make them and they're really handy for whoever's using them. It's just 1.5-inch square tube, and then we've measured out the right distance for the 2x4s to be set. This particular one is for a customer. He's a local guy that builds fence here in Springfield, and he said, hey, I noticed you, one of your guys had some cool jigs. Where'd you get those? And I said, oh, well, we make them. He's like, oh, that's awesome. I want a set. So we went and made him a set. So we do lots of stuff like that. Anything to make the fence building experience more efficient, we're all about. We'll be hanging out for a few more minutes, so if you guys have any last minute questions, throw them up on the comments and we'll try to get to you before we go. Yeah, you can bring it back outside. Just a stock one.
You have a gentleman coming around front to
10-4. got any last minute comments? No. All right. Well, hopefully this video showed you guys the process of making our wood gates. Really appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully you got some useful information out of this. Let us know in the comments later what you think about it, and if you'd like to see something else or another topic that we didn't cover today, we'd be glad to do it in another video. Appreciate you guys watching.